Hello, welcome to the Black Uplift. I hope you're well today. I'm gonna jump straight in. There's been another one. There's been another shooting in the US, this time in LA. A guy called, I believe it's Dijon Kizzee, shot over 20 times. It's just non-stop. It is overwhelming. It's just like, how the hell does this keep happening? How does this keep happening? I mean, I'm asking how. Of course, I know how, but it's just unbelievable. I mean, Jacob Blake, was that last week or the week before that? It's barely been any time at all. And the circumstances, and then the most painful detail. Apparently he was shot at 3:15 p.m. and at 10:45 his body was still lying on the streets. What a way to remove the dignity completely from a person. You know, this awakening this year, it is heavy. If you've not watched my first video, you know that I had an awakening this year racially. Before now, I was completely oblivious to what was going on. I was in a bubble. I had convinced myself that it was a one-off thing that happens and it wasn't the systemic thing that it actually is. So this is real heavy, and I do feel like I'm in the early stages of that. So right now I feel strongly connected to my brothers and sisters in the US, my cousins who were taken away hundreds of years ago and been through everything that they've gone through and are still going through. It's like the worst possible combination of everything. The history and the gun laws just make this potent, violent combination. And it's terribly sad, but it can be terribly energizing. It might just be what is needed for people to finally say enough is enough. And not in a way of just saying it, but actually taking action to make sure that is the case. Because how long can this continue? With Jacob Blake, we have his 3 little boys who saw that. And so the programming starts. And that's where they start being conditioned. Can you imagine the trauma? The trauma those kids are going to have. The memory of their father being shot. How do you undo that? How do you unsee that in a young mind? It's like being in war. I don't know how else to put it. There will be PTSD. This is just awful. Why does there need to be so many guns? Why is it such a state? Yes, I know the history, but at what point do we move away from that? I mean, here in the UK, there is still that history. There is still the systemic racism, but the police are not empowered to take lives on the street because they simply do not have the means to do that. Yes, they can still profile. Yes, they can still do more stops, but they can't take your life. And it really is quite shocking in the US when you juxtapose a situation like this to what happened with the 17-year-old last week who had literally shot people, who had this gun in front of him, and he was allowed to walk past. Apparently, this Dijon Kizzee guy was stopped for a quote-unquote traffic violation. Now, we're still waiting for more details. We're still waiting for more information, preferably a full video of what happened. But the excessive use of force is something so alien to me. Guns are deadly. The way they train it at people, you have 4 or 5 officers all train their guns on one person. It's a level of violence that I think I can't comprehend. I can't comprehend that level. It's just insane to me. My question for you guys, Black Americans, now what are you going to do? What are you going to do in response to this? The stuff you've been doing for the last 50, 100, 150 years, is it working? If it's not working, why are you not going to do something different? If what you're doing isn't working, why are you not going to do something different? Because it feels like everything's getting to a boiling point. And nobody knows where this ends. I mean, I'm not even there. I cannot imagine being there. And I really hope that it's not as bad as I picture it. I really hope that it is exaggerated in my mind, the amount of day-to-day fear that you have to live with. But actually, I watch a lot of Black American YouTubers who have moved from the US and moved to other places. And when they talk about the weight that comes off their shoulder, how they feel safer straight away, how they have a sense that they're at peace. So maybe I'm not just making it up. Regardless, guys, you need to come up with a strategy. I'm sure this is not new information. You know, people have been talking about this for hundreds of years. We need to find something that works. You have the president today in an interview saying that officers choke. And I thought at first he was referring to the George Floyd situation, but oh no. He was using that in a context. Essentially, officers can snap, and that's why they do crazy things. And it's just such an unfortunate timing to use words like that. It's so cold. It's almost as if he's making it clear where he stands. This is where I stand. Regardless of what they do, I support the police. Whether they do good, whether they do bad, they support them. And I am still refining my thoughts. You know, I don't want to go down the conspiracy theory pathway, but there is clearly the argument that the police are part of the race soldiers, that they are there, part of their foundation of their being formed was to maintain the control over black bodies. And the more I see these things happen, the more I wonder whether there's truth to it. Because this is insane. That level of violence, and then to hear it being justified from the top without fairness. I'm not one for joining a bandwagon and criticizing someone. You know, one of the things I actively try and do is keep an open mind and try and hear both sides. But I don't understand Trump. The hypocrisy, the shouting law and order in one breath, but then have this much criminal activity going on in his circle. People that were involved in his campaign being arrested left, right, and center. Involvement with dubious people Law and order? Really? Does that really matter to you that much? So that hypocrisy is not lost on me as I continue to dig in, but there clearly is a violent system here, and it needs sorting out, it needs looking into. One of the things that has come up for me this year is I have gone from being quite blasé about what my plans are going to be in the next 10, 15, 20 years to go, actually, I want to plan for how I'm going to return to the continent of Africa within the next 5 to 10 years. I want to be surrounded by Black people for the most part again. I want to be in the majority. I want to be with my own. So I've been pushed from being quite laid back to I need to get a plan together, because there needs to be a safe place where people like my brothers and sisters in the US can get away from, can come home and feel safe and feel like they belong. Almost like preparing a home for them to say, welcome home. You've been through it. You have been through some tough shit. Welcome back home. So I try not to have too much of a heavy heart. I can't imagine having to mourn one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. Chadwick Boseman was just last weekend. Jacob Blake wasn't that long before that. We were just getting over George Floyd, or at least for it to come off the daily news. And now there's something else. The worry is that it'll get to a point where we'll get desensitized again, like it was in the days of slavery, like it was in Jim Crow, where it was just the norm and people are just up to their necks in grief. They can't grieve it anymore. There's nothing left to give. That would be a terrible place to be. So that's what I'm thinking right now. As always, my heart is with you guys, my brothers and sisters out there. Stay safe.